Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of An Attempt to Fly Under the Radar. This will be Part 10, Chapters 11 and 12. Chapter 11, The Rose-Colored Glasses of Eijiro Kirishima. Eijiro Kirishima always prided himself on being able to see the best in everyone around him. He had been raised to believe that people couldn't be boxed into solely good or bad people. He'd always been told that you had to get to know someone before passing judgment onto them. It's why he could never understand bullies. How could someone make a snap judgment about a person and then torment them over it? How could people be mistreated for things such as their quirk, their hair color, their height, to name a few? It was wrong, and it was something Kirishima couldn't just sit by and let happen, but he was scared, and it wasn't for a lack of trying either. He'd intervene if he saw a classmate being bullied, but then the bully would turn their attention to him and his simple quirk. It got his face smashed in by a rock, and his friends told him not to intervene. It's why he respected Ashido so much. He'd known her since middle school, and she was just so cool. She was pretty, had a strong quirk, and was all around an amazing person who never failed to put bullies in their place, and have them reconcile with their victims. There were talks amongst their teachers and classmates about her being a shoo-in for becoming a ranked pro hero in the future, but she never let it go to her head. How manly was that? Her attitude, alongside that one Crimson Riot interview, inspired him to get out of his head and apply to UA. It's what made him decide once and for all to stop being a coward and fully live by Crimson Riot's philosophy. High school was supposed to be a do-over for him. High school was supposed to be the chance to wipe the slate clean from his years of trying and failing to be brave. But as he watched the black Lexus drive away from Heights Alliance, he was hit with the realization that for all of his bravado of starting over, he hadn't changed at all. He was nothing more than the same coward back in middle school who let that underclassman be carried away by those bullies. He knew all the way back from the quirk assessment test that Bakugo and Midoriya had a history together. Why else would Bakugo have bum-rushed him the way he did? The battle trials only enforced his point, and he felt helpless watching the blonde ambushing him, pulling the pin on his gauntlet as All Might demanded for him to stand down, lest he kill Midoriya. The whole thing left a bad taste in Kirishima's mouth. Bakugo left a bad taste in Kirishima's mouth, but that changed when the USJ incident happened. Maybe it was the way Bakugo took charge of the situation and had Kirishima help him try and ambush that Warp Gate villain. God, he would never not be sorry every time he saw him as 13. Maybe it was the way they fought together in the Ruin Zone and tried fighting that villain again. There was a bond that wasn't easily broken. But in hindsight, that was when the rose-colored glasses fell onto Kirishima's face. At the time, when Bakugo got in front of Class 1B and 1C and vowed to defeat them in the sports festival, Kirishima had thought the way he stood his ground against everyone was amazing. When he got up in front of the crowd and vowed to win, he just brushed it aside as Bakugo being himself. And he didn't think much of his feral rage as Miss Midnight announced his loss to Uraraka. The way she held her own against him had been the manliest thing ever. He just needed to get control of his temper, stop getting so many detentions, and then he'd be amazing. Right? No. The signs were all there, and he should have read them. The two of them were studying for their final exams, and not only had Kirishima been screamed at and insulted by him the entire time, they ran into some old classmates of Bakugo and Midoriya from middle school. According to them, Bakugo's temper used to be even worse. He used to be self-centered, someone who thought the world owed him. He used to be so bad that, had it been 1 or 2 years ago, the blonde not only would have not offered to tutor anyone, but he would have gone as far as to beat up anyone who dared approach him. He also learned that they bullied Midoriya due to believing that he was quirkless. At the time, Kirishima couldn't believe it. Midoriya had a powerful quirk and broke his bones whenever he used it. How could he have been quirkless? Midoriya was also an amazingly kind person. Who would ever bully him? Weren't you bullied for your quirk? He hadn't made the connection between how they felt like they couldn't compliment Midoriya in front of Bakugo, or how angry hearing Midoriya's name made Bakugo. He hadn't made the connection in how Bakugo's yelling got them kicked out of the library, and Midoriya got the blame even though he wasn't there. Wasn't Midoriya always flinching anytime Bakugo yelled or used his quirk? Wasn't Bakugo always yelling at Midoriya and using his quirk on him? For that matter, wasn't Midoriya really quiet and not confident in himself? What was it that he thought to himself that day? Was it how Midoriya may have felt after being bullied for so long? Was it how to help him build self-confidence? No, it had been. Forgiving was just a small deed for Midoriya. He lives and breathes for the sake of saving those who are suffering. Midoriya's thoughts and feelings in the matter had been completely brushed aside. It had been so easy to rationalize back then. Midoriya was such a forgiving person. Why else would he continue referring to Bakugo as his childhood friend and refuse to draw a line in the sand? Why else did no one intervene when the blonde had lost his temper on him? If it was a problem, then Mr. Aizawa would have stepped in, right? Ashido would have said something, right? If Midoriya didn't have a problem with his behavior, then it wasn't his place to intervene, right? Right? The revelation of Bakugo's expulsion from UA proved him wrong. The revelation that Bakugo was unapologetic for the way he treated Midoriya proved him wrong. The revelation that Bakugo couldn't care less how he treated him and the rest of their classmates proved him wrong. The revelation of what Deku meant proved him wrong. The revelation that his past teachers saw nothing wrong with any of this proved him wrong. Katsuki Bakugo, someone Kirishima thought of as a friend, and a pillar of manliness to look up to, had been a bully. He had not only been a proud bully, but Kirishima had just sat by and let it happen right under his own nose. He really hadn't changed at all from middle school. So much for reinventing himself. Chapter 12. A Long Time Coming. The moment Izuku stepped into the dorms, he knew he could kiss his planned nap goodbye. All of his classmates were gathered in the common area, and the moment the front door opened and closed, he felt 17 pairs of eyes snap towards him. They were looking at him with varying levels of curiosity, remorse, and concern, and it made the hairs on his neck raise. Why was everyone looking at him like he had just been diagnosed with a terminal illness? He toed his shoes off and switched them out for his slippers, trying to ensure his face didn't betray the mounting anxiety trying to take over him. Hey guys, what's up? He lamely offered. Everyone exchanged uncomfortable looks with one another before Ida stood and all but sprinted towards Izuku. Midoriya, please allow me to profusely apologize for my conduct the day before yesterday, he announced. It was very unbecoming of me to assume that you were also at fault the night you and Bakugo fought. It took a bit for the green-haired boy's brain to comprehend what just transpired in front of him. No one but All Might ever apologized to him when it came to him and Bakugo. But when his bespectacled friend's words finally hit him, his usual smile spread across his face. Hey, don't worry about it, Ida, he said, sheepishly scratching the back of his head. You didn't know the full story, and I guess I really should have put my foot down and said no. To his immense surprise, Ida gravely shook his head. Thank you for your generosity, but I'm afraid my actions cannot be disregarded, he countered. Bakugo's abhorrent attitude towards you is nothing new to any of us, and it was obvious you were coerced into participating in the fight. As your friend, I should have given you the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. I promise that I will work hard to make amends for this, Midoriya. Ida's intensity towards life was nothing new to Izuku, but the intensity he was putting into his apology felt vindicating. Hearing those words come out of his mouth, that he was coerced into fighting, that he should have supported him from the word go, felt like a salve for a gaping wound that he only just recently started to acknowledge. And hearing those words from one of his best friends was something he hadn't realized he needed up until now. He knew the hurt wasn't going to be erased just yet, but this would be an amazing step forward. Swallowing down the lump in his throat, he looked up at Ida and smiled. Okay, Ida. Looking around behind the taller boy, Ochako beamed, tears welling up in her eyes. Todoroki nodded approvingly from next to her. Everyone else was still looking at him with apprehensive guilt, and as he did another head count, he noticed that someone was missing. A certain blonde-haired, red-eyed bully of his. Craning his head to listen upstairs, he didn't hear the telltale yelling and cursing that signified his presence. A quick glance at the shoe rack let him know that both his slippers and shoes were gone. What was going on? What were his classmates not telling him? Guys, where's Bakugo? He asked, trying and failing to sound nonchalant. He didn't even know why he was so scared. Maybe it was the dour atmosphere in the dorms, or maybe it was the fact that something clearly happened while he was on campus and no one wanted to be forthcoming about it. Either way, it rubbed Izuku the wrong way. Suyu stepped out from behind Ochako, practically the embodiment of concern as she looked at Izuku. "Bakugo was expelled, Ribbit," she quietly said. "He was really angry about it." Suyu's voice faded into the background, and the room spun. The floor was pulled out from under Izuku's feet, and he could hear yelling before a pair of strong arms caught him and helped him over to one of the armchairs. Someone was yelling at someone else to get some water, but he didn't care about any of that. Expelled. Katsuki Bakugo was expelled. UA, the top heroic school in the country, had expelled Bakugo. A cyclone of conflicting emotions swept onto Izuku. Horror, concern, guilt, relief, elation, surprise. Bakugo would never forgive him. He told him to kill himself. What is there to forgive? The mark on his permanent record would bar him from any other heroic school. Good. It'll protect everyone else from him. Bakugo would never become a hero. Whose fault is that? Principal Nezu said he wouldn't have to worry about hiding his potential anymore. Was this what he meant? Obviously. How did everyone else feel? Why did it matter how they felt? Were they upset at him for ruining Bakugo's career? That was on them for putting their eggs in Bakugo's basket. Did they hate him? "Hey, Midoriya." Izuku looked up from his lap. It was Ashido who was kneeling in front of him, and he'd never seen her look so serious in almost half a year of knowing her. She held out a glass of water and tentatively patted his knee. "Drink this. It'll help you calm down." He took the glass with a shaky hand, taking hesitant sips of the cold liquid as his surroundings came back to him. He was flanked on both sides by Uraraka and Todoroki, Tsuyu and Ida both incredibly close by. Everyone else was situated around him, throughout the common area, trying not to suffocate him. Ashido was still in front of him, and he could see that Kirishima had joined her. "Hey, Midoriya," he said quietly, his hands clenched into fists by his sides. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. I didn't know that things were that bad between you and Bakugo." "Yes, you did," Dark Shadow piped up as he manifested out of Tokiyami. He flew over to Izuku and wrapped him in a protective hug. "Bakugo was always awful to Midoriya." Kirishima winced. I know. But why didn't you ever say anything?" Izuku quietly asked as Dark Shadow rested his chin on top of his head. "Why didn't anybody say anything?" As his classmates shifted nervously where they sat, as they gave each other and Izuku unreadably nervous looks, Tokiyami finally spoke up. "We don't have an acceptable answer for that, Midoriya," he said, looking Izuku steadily in the eye. "But it was inexcusable how we stood by and let it happen. I offer my most profuse apologies to you." Sero rubbed his neck. "I'm sorry, too," he added. "I guess I just bought into the hype surrounding how strong he was. It was really messed up of me." "We also thought if it was really a problem, Mr. Aizawa would have said something," Kaminari interrupted. "I mean, isn't he always going on and on about how super strict he is, and he'll expel us if we sit at our desks the wrong way?" Jiro narrowed her eyes at the blonde. "Yeah, but it was pretty obvious that he had it out for Midoriya from day one," she said. "It doesn't make it any less okay, but since he never said anything about it, we didn't either." Yaoyorozu clutched her arm, guilt clear as day across her face. "As vice president, I should have intervened before things got this bad. Midoriya, I'm so sorry." Izuku kept his eyes on Kirishima. While everyone else wasn't blameless in letting Bakugo go unchecked, they were at least acknowledging their part in it with minimal to no excuse. They also weren't the ones who constantly went to bat for him and gushed about his manliness, or how amazing he was in spite of the battle trials or the sports festival. "I'm a coward, Midoriya." The blunt admission brought a whole new level of tension to the room, and Ashido looked behind her in concern at her red-haired classmate. "I always hated bullies, still do. And though I wanted to intervene, I could never find it within me to man up and put them in their places. Man, you were one of the reasons I applied to UA in the first place. Seeing you charge at that sludge villain while the pro heroes just sat back and did nothing was amazing. It was inspiring." The small, wistful smile on Kirishima's face faded, and he took a deep breath before continuing. I was bullied due to my quirk growing up, and with how Bakugo actually gave me the time of day, It put up some blinders in me with how he acted towards you, Midoriya. I should have seen how aggressive he was towards you for what it was and not rationalized it away in my head. Midoriya, I'm sorry. He bowed his head, and Izuku just stared at him, honestly conflicted on how to feel. On the one hand, Kirishima had always been nothing but kind to him. He was never afraid of swallowing his pride and asking him for some extra tutoring, praising him when he got a better grade on a test or an assignment. He never participated in the bullying or egged it on. Everyone in class liked him. His apology seemed genuine. But on the other hand, he was perhaps the biggest cheerleader that Bakugo had. While he never outright condoned or participated in the bullying, he never did anything to stop it either. He always brushed off Bakugo's outbursts as just him being himself, and never tried pulling him aside to tell him that his behavior was wrong. Though his apology seemed genuine, it was a long time coming. For the moment, he settled on a simple nod. "Thanks, Kirishima," he quietly said. "You shouldn't have been bullied for any reason. I think I'm going to go lay down for a little bit. Thanks for your apologies." He never said he forgave them. He never said he forgave Kirishima. What did that mean for their relationship in the future? Dark Shadow gave him one last squeeze before reluctantly returning to Tokiyami, and as he stood up, he answered the silent question Ida, Todoroki, Uraraka, and Tsuyu asked with a look of his own that said, "I just need a nap. I'll explain everything later, I promise." He headed up the stairs and welcomed the familiar sanctuary that was his room. He let the door shut behind him as he flopped face first on the bed, letting sleep take over. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 12 of An Attempt to Fly Under the Radar. Just 2 more chapters to go in this fic. I hope you all are still enjoying. Let me know your thoughts and reactions to everything so far, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.